What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Propability. We're going to dive deep into some of these props for UFC Vegas 63. We now have a 10-fight card. Cody Durden was able to get a new opponent, so that fight is on. We're still waiting to see. I think it's Clayton Rodriguez if he gets an opponent, but yeah, right now 10 fights. Can't wait to go through them. I am here as always with Uncle WEEZY. WEEZY, looking forward to talk some props tonight.
Yes, I am. I just got back from Miami today. I had to actually tell the pilot to hurry up so that I would be in time to do Propability, and we just made it, just wolfed down dinner, ready to talk some props. I've got all the lines that are available in the template right now, and there's already a couple of things standing out to me. Definitely looking forward to chatting with you guys because this is an interesting card from a time prop perspective. And I think there might be some money to be made because I don't like these fights from a money line perspective. But so far, what I'm seeing in the props is looking a lot more bettable. So I'm fired up for this one.
Yeah, for me, nothing's sticking out right now, but I'm sure after we get done with the show, I'm sure a couple spots are going to stick out. So can't wait to talk with you, WEEZY, and with the chat as well. Shout out to the chat. We got Mushroom in here. We got Victor in here, Philip, Pink. If you guys can all please hit the like button, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. Let us keep growing the channel here. But I say we get right into it, and we will start with the first fight. We have Cody Durden going against, there we go, Carlos Mota. So we have nothing. We have no line here, WEEZY. This is the only fight where we don't have a line. But we could talk a little bit about these guys. You know, Cody Durden is a guy that can finish very early, and it looks like Mota has finished about half his wins, those coming by knockout. Durden's been finished a couple times. So, and I believe Mota's been finished in his only loss as well. So this is a spot that kind of may lead towards violence, but hopefully we get a playable line on it because it is a 125-pound fight.
Yeah, so for these 121-pound fights right now, we can take a look at the analytics here. The divisional rate. So we got 0 on the implied probability. So these numbers here are going to be the benchmarks for the division. So fight doesn't go to the decision 41.28% of the time, under 2.5, 37.87% of the time, the under 1.5, 27.66% of the time. Those are the benchmarks for the division. And we know that Cody Durden's fights have finished inside the distance 3 out of 5 times. And as a matter of fact, he's been under 1.5 3 out of 5 times, and he's been under 2.5 3 out of 5 times. So Durden is 11 of 13 on his wins and 3 of 4 on his losses. So we're talking about a guy who's 14 out of 18 because there's a draw in there as well. For total fights finishing inside the distance. So that's a pretty good number. Mota 5 of 9. So when we combine it, these guys are finishing inside the distance 70% of the time, but 4 of 5 finishes are inside the distance, or 4 or 5 losses are inside the distance. So that's, usually leads me towards a violence bet, knowing that both guys can be finished. But Mota's finish was in the 5th round. So we got to keep that in mind. This is going to be a 3-round fight. I think Mota might be very difficult to finish here. But as far as the benchmarks go here, we should be getting plus money for a fight doesn't go to decision, or at least we're hoping that we get that. And we do know that these guys are finishing at about a 70% rate on the whole, and even at a 60% rate on the UFC level when we talk about Durden's fights. So, he definitely goes for it, Durden does. And Mota, this is going to be a short notice debut here. Could be leaning violence in this spot. If we can get something maybe around a plus 140, a plus 130 for fight doesn't go, and something that would be, around a 37% implied probability for an under 2.5, maybe around a plus 185 or something like that. These are the numbers that I would be looking for on the violence bets. I'd be a little bit scared to go over here to the non-violent side. Less than 3 out of their 10 fights have went to decision, as pros, and that's 7 out of 27. That's a pretty good sample size for these guys. So I'm definitely looking at the violent side here, even though we don't have any lines yet.
Yeah, let's see if they put it at plus money. If they do, I'll take a look. Last week we had to lay minus 300 for a flyweight fight doesn't go to decision. It almost didn't cash, which was crazy. But we'll want to see where they open up the line. But it's something I will consider if it is priced decently. All right, we'll move on to the next fight here. We have Chase Hooper going against Steve Garcia. We have the over/under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 on BetOnline +124. The under 2.5 is -154. The fight goes decision +150. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 180. This is one where violence sticks out, but to be honest, I'm not really loving the price here. Let's see what the prop template says about this one, WEEZY.
Yeah, man. So, we can see this number right over here, Brady, indicates what these guys' finish rates are combined as professionals. And it is 64.52% in 31 fights. So, we're going to expect probably to pay a juiced number on the fight doesn't go to decision here, but it's minus 180. The under 2.5 is minus 154. And we can see these numbers here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more for you guys here. Minus 21%, minus 22%. So what that means is that this division, the 145-pound division, these fights are finishing inside the distance 3-round fights about 43% of the time. We're paying 64% right here. So we're paying 21.32% more than the benchmark. And for the under 2.5, it's 22.61% more than the benchmark. Now, we're overpaying for the under 2.5 here by 20.63%. And by the fight doesn't go to decision for only 4.29% for some reason. So definitely we've got some fighter finish rates that are happening a little bit more between 2.5 and the end of the fight, especially Chase Hooper's last fight, for instance. Yeah. But these guys are finishing inside the distance 17% higher than what the division is. But, neither one of these guys are absolute killers. It's a 60% finish rate for these guys. Hooper, 3 of 6. Garcia, 3 of 4. But Garcia's had some pretty low-level opponents thus far. So, I just think that I kind of like violence here. And what's really regrettable is that Ben Askren was on my flight from Miami back to Chicago today. And he was sitting behind me like 5 rows. And I actually, when I looked up and saw him walking by me, I got on the plane before him. And when I saw him walking by me, I just said, holy shit, Ben Askren. And he's like, what's up, man? I just introduced myself, said I liked watching you fight, shook his hand. And then I was thinking to myself, shit, man, Chase Hooper's fighting. And I know that Askren was training with Hooper for a while. I was like, I got to fucking ask him what's going on with Hooper. But then after I got off the flight, went to the bathroom, I kind of was like looking for him. I couldn't fucking find him. So I have no inside information from Ben Askren being on my flight. But, if I would have stayed to look for him anymore, I would have been late for probability. So, these sometimes it doesn't always work out, Brady. But, yeah, man, we see these non-violence lines here, 17% underpriced, man. If you want to take a shot based on the analytics here, this over 2.5 at plus 124 is probably the way that I would look at it, because exactly 40% of these fights have went to decision, but exactly 60% of the fights have went over 2.5. So you're getting a better break there, but it's a small sample size of UFC fights. I don't think we can get too excited about this number here, but I would lean the non-violent side because they're very underpriced in comparison to the benchmark.
Yeah, Hooper finished Caloris after that 2.5, and then he also finished one Slippery Pete Barrett over that 2.5. Yeah, Chase Hooper, he went out in his last fight, just went all out instantly. And Steve Garcia is kind of the same way. Like, I think this is going to be such a fun fight, but a fight where I'm probably not going to lay the minus 180 on that fight doesn't go. If it comes in, maybe I'll take a look, but I don't really think it's going to come in. So this is a pass for me. And it's a pass from the money line, by the way. Chase Hooper now minus 280. Who's laying minus 280 on Chase Hooper on FanDuel Sportsbook? But yeah, I think I'm going to stay away. But this should be a fun fight, WEEZY.
Yeah, it should be. And, like Hooper looked so fucking good in his last fight that's what happens, man. When somebody looks that good and that's the most recent thing in people's minds, you're going to have to really overpay for him. So there might be some value on these non-violence lines, because if Hooper can't get down Garcia, this fight might go for a minute. And then, you might be really overpaying here. And let's say Garcia lands a couple big shots early because Hooper doesn't exactly have the best takedown accuracy. So either way, man, this is going to be a really fun fight. But as far as the time props, I'm scared to go over, and I think the unders are overpriced.
I feel the exact same way. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We got Joseph Holmes going against Jung Young Park. We had the over/under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is -170. The under 2.5 is +140. That did open up at +160. The fight goes decision -150. The fight doesn't go decision +120. WEEZY, what's sticking out on this one here?
Yeah, so I've got a bet on this one. It opened up in a little bit more advantageous price, but I did go with the unders here. I went with the under 2.5 at +160 for 1.5 units. I made it a big bet. At +160, this number looks a little bit better. It's an 11.65% break, but this line right now is at +140. And when we compare that to the benchmark, it's underpriced by 8.44%. And when we compare the 120 fight doesn't go to decision to the benchmark, we're getting a 9.77% break there. These guys have been under 2.5 at the UFC level about 44.5% of the time. So we're getting a little bit of a break there in comparison to the implied probability of the line, getting a nice fat break when we compare the divisional finish rate to the implied probability of the line. And we can also see that these guys are finish rates as pros are about 65%. And we're paying significantly less than that on these lines. And then 4 of the 9 fights have finished inside the distance. So that's 44%. We're paying about 45% here. So it's a fairly priced line right now. But Joseph Holmes has got a 100% finish rate as a pro. You know, we definitely like that. And we've seen Jung Young Park finished in both of his UFC losses. And Jung Young Park's definitely a guy who relies on his chin. And when you have a fighter that does that, it brings out the war in both fighters because both guys are probably going to be landing big shots. Jung Young Park, I mean, he was really close to getting Gregory Rodriguez out of there a couple of fights ago and wound up being the one to get knocked out. I think Jung Young Park is absolutely live to finish Joseph Holmes. And I think Joseph Holmes with a 100% finish rate as a pro, dude with a ton of power, is absolutely live to finish Jung Young Park as well. So at a big plus number, I took a shot on violence here. And when we look over here at the non-violent side, we're overpaying by 13 and 15% when we compare these numbers to the benchmark. So we are paying a really juiced up line for a couple of really dangerous fighters in Park and Holmes here. So interesting fight. I mean, I could see it obviously going the distance. Anything can happen here, but I really like that nice little almost 10% break we're getting here and the 8.5% break here. And I liked it enough to bet it for 1.5 units.
Yeah, and those lines are much different compared to Bet Online, like or 5 dimes. So on Bet Online, they have +140 for the under 2.5. On 5 dimes, it's +120, and then on Bet Online, the fight doesn't go as +120, and on 5 dimes, it's -110. So that was something that really stuck out to me, especially when that +160 was sitting there. But this is what I need to kind of look into a little bit more. I did miss the line a little bit, but if I like what I see, I'll probably hop on that +140 because I think that still keeps closing. And I could see the fight doesn't go be around to pick them where it's at, like on 5 dimes. So one I got to look into a little bit more. But yeah, +160 was like the what was it? It was like the best line on the entire card in terms of violence on that under. So that was interesting. But yeah, it's +140 now.
Of all the 2.5s, it was the Holmes Park fight that was the cheapest. And I was like, man, that's, so sometimes I'm not really thinking that necessarily the fight is going to finish inside the distance. I'm just seeing a line that's priced way out of whack in comparison to how the other fights are priced. It's just comparison shopping, y'all, and that's all I did there. It was just an underpriced line that I felt like I had to take advantage of.
Yeah, for example, remember the Pat Sabatini Damon Jackson fight? Like we thought it was probably going the distance, right? But we saw that +190 there, and we were like +190, +200. Like we got to take a shot, and we did, and it paid off in like a minute.
It paid off so easily. And not only that, the reason we took that shot is because Damon Jackson, as a professional fighter in a fat sample size, got over a 90% finish rate in his combined wins and losses. So those are the bets that you can look at the stylistic matchup and say, yeah, you know what? I think this one probably is going to go to decision, but +190, it's a mispriced line. And if you find those every week, in the long run, you're gonna come out ahead.
Yeah, don't mind taking some shots on those plus money props that are off for sure. All right, let's move on to a very weird one, Weezy.
Yeah.
We have De Lima here going against Andre Arlovski. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 juiced to -161. The under 2.5 rounds is +131. The fight goes to this decision, -130. The fight doesn't go to decision, is +100. I think this is strange. We have Marcos De Lima, who's -250. -237. He's a finisher. He's finished the majority of his wins, and the majority of them in the first round. Arlovski's been finished like 13 times. You would think that the fight doesn't go, it'd be more correlated with that De Lima money line. Like, he's heavily favored to win, and you got to think if De Lima wins, it's probably by knockout. So the plus money on that fight doesn't go for a heavyweight fight. I know Arlovski's not finishing anybody, but again, De Lima's like heavily favored to win here, so that doesn't make much sense. And we were talking, Weezy, like about that finish only for De Lima smash spot. Well, BetOnline was all over it. -400 for the opener for the finish only of Marcos. They're all over it. -400. So we'll see what DraftKings and FanDuel put it out at. But BetOnline, shout out to you guys. You nailed it. That is perfect. -400 makes a lot of sense. But yeah, Weezy, this is one where I'm kind of tempted on that plus money fight doesn't go, or even like De Lima like knockout, De Lima round 1 knockout around like +450 are all kind of props I'm looking at. And then like on the Arlovski side, the decision prop, the split decision, I see this playing out one of two ways. Arlovski weasels his way to a decision, or De Lima starches him in the first round. Are you seeing it the same way, and what's sticking out from a prop perspective here?
Yeah, it's an Arlovski fight, so you would think that, yeah, it's going to go to decision. But the thing is like he tends to hypnotize guys who want to be in a point fighting match. But Rogerio De Lima is definitely a guy that has went after it as a pro, and when he's standing, he throws with intention. And he's got 16 of his 19 professional wins, Brady, are inside the distance, and 6 of 8 losses. So these guys have got some really good numbers. It's a 60, almost a 59% finish rate for Arlovski, but 56 total fights. There's a lot of UFC fights here. For a heavyweight to be at 52% in 38 fights, he's definitely a guy that is the type of fighter that makes you want to chase an over, right? But De Lima's a guy, 11 of 14. That's 78.5%. That you're talking about, that implied probability, Brady, is sitting over, maybe -320-ish, and we're getting plus money here for violence. So I think, and the prop template thinks, because it takes 2 to tango, right? So we're not just looking at Arlovski's numbers here. We got to consider De Lima's as well. And if we figure this 43.29% implied probability on the under 2.5 at +131, 15.3% better than the benchmark, and these guys are a 14.4% better when you combine their UFC experience and subtract the implied probability of the line. So that means 57.69% of these guys' combined UFC fights are going under 2.5, and we're only paying 43.29%. So 15% break here, 14% break here. That under 2.5 is something I can't believe I haven't bet yet.
Yeah, and it's even better on like 5Dimes. 5Dimes has +135.
Damn.
5Dimes also has the fight doesn't go up +105. Yeah, it just doesn't make much sense. You have a guy in De Lima who is like -225, heavily favored to win, and the guy's a finisher. Like, the guy has finished, I think, all but 2 of his wins were in the very first round by knockout. So yeah, that plus money on that under and the fight doesn't go is something I'm heavily considering, even though I don't really see much finishing upside for Arlovski. But we have seen De Lima like completely fall off a cliff after the first round before. Like, maybe Arlovski can get him out of there late, so maybe it covers both sides. But I think the most likely scenario is De Lima finishing Arlovski in the first round. And another thing, Arlovski has shown some durability lately, but guess who else was durable? Big Ben Rothwell. Big Ben Rothwell hadn't been finished for like 12 years, I think. And then De Lima ran right through Big Ben Rothwell, who's super durable. So De Lima hits like a truck. And what I also noticed was you take a look at Arlovski, like he's losing these decisions or going to decision, but Jake Collier, he doesn't hit hard. Jared Vandera, he doesn't hit hard. Carlos Felipe doesn't hit hard. Chase Sherman hits hard, but he's kind of a bum. Tanner Bozer doesn't hit hard. Philippe Linz kind of hits hard, but he's a bum. And when he's losing, he's getting knocked out by Rosenstruck. He hits hard. Aspinall hurt him bad and then submitted him. Walt Harris, tied to Ivasa, knocked him down. Ngannou hits pretty hard. Overeem hits pretty hard. Stipe hits pretty hard. I think De Lima hits pretty hard. It could potentially knock him out here, Weezy.
Yeah, and check this out, dude. You want to know a real cheeky way to go after this, in my opinion?
Sarah.
One of these two guys is going to have their way, right? Mm-hmm. But if we look at De Lima, he's got 14 fights at the UFC level, but I do a count in my little template here that counts under 1.5s, dude. De Lima has been under 2.5 just as many times as he's been under 1.5.
Yeah.
So, and we can see it here, 78.57% of De Lima's fights have went under 1.5. So maybe we say, if we're going to bet violence, let's assume De Lima has his way. Dude, if De Lima has his way, we should bet the under 1.5 instead of the under 2.5. Get that fatter number, and then realize this. This information here is the cage time for De Lima. Now, there's a number here, 441. There's a number 431. The only two numbers bigger than that are 900, which means that 450 seconds is 1.5 rounds. If he goes over 450, he gets to 900. So I think a cheekier way to play this would be to look for that under 1.5, and maybe we can get something like that closer to plus 200. And
it's plus 215 on 5 dimes.
Plus 215. That number gives us an 11% break here, a 20% break when we compare this fat sample size of UFC fights for these two guys. 20%. That's a trifecta bet, dude. That's a fat trifecta bet where the 3 edges that you get over the benchmarks from the implied probabilities and the fighter finish rates adds up to 40%. That's a fat bet, my friend.
Sounds good, man. I like it. I like
Arlovski under 1.5.
I like it. I like that extra round. Yeah, I like that a lot. So hopefully we get it around like that plus 200 mark. Yeah, I'm definitely taking a shot at that. So we'll have to see. And then I also might be sprinkling that De Lima first round knockout as well.
Yeah, agreed, man. And these are heavyweights. They definitely hit hard, but like you said, those guys that have been going to decision with Arlovski lately are not the heaviest hitters in the division, but De Lima, dude, De Lima's power numbers, 1.8% of his significant strikes result in a knockdown, and he's averaging just under 1 knockdown per 15 minutes. So that's another archetype of fighter that brings violence.
I like it. So I think we found a solid spot there. So we will move on to the next fight. And we have Phil Hawes going against Roman Lindsay. We have the over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. We have the over 2.5 at minus 135. The under 2.5 is plus 105. You have about a pick 'em here for the fight goes or doesn't go. The fight goes is minus 110. The fight doesn't go is minus 120. And I kind of agree with it. Like, this is a fight where I don't have a strong read whether it's going to finish. I think both guys are killers. Both guys are very, very dangerous. I think in terms of durability, Lindsay has shown very good durability. Hawes has not. I don't know. What's sticking out on this one?
So we've got a couple of trifecta bets here at minus 120 and plus 105 for the fight doesn't go in the under 2.5 respectively. But, just like we saw in that under 1.5 where the numbers added up to about 40%, here we're getting one that adds up to about 6% for the fight doesn't go, and one that adds up to about almost 20% for the under 2.5. Getting a much nicer break for the under 2.5 in comparison for the fight doesn't go when we're comparing those fighter under 2.5 rates to the implied probability of the line. So the under 2.5 kind of sticks out on the prop template. When we look at these guys' numbers, we can see 80% finish rates for these guys. as professionals. Now, that number goes down a lot here at the UFC level. It goes down to 58% in a 12-fight sample size. So two of these guys, 3 fights that have been losses have been finished inside the distance. 5 of their 9 wins have finished inside the distance. Very surprising finish by Dolidze against Kyle Dawkins last time out, who's known for being a very durable guy. But Hawes, Hawes is 5 of 7 at the UFC level, 13 of 15 as a pro. So everything outside the UFC finished inside the distance. So I think Hawes is definitely the kind of archetype of fighter that we want to see go for violence bets. But 41.67% of their UFC fights are going to decision, and we're paying about 52% here. So, man, these overs are way overpriced. This is a negative trifecta bet where we're overpaying by about a combined 21%. This is a negative trifecta bet, the over 2.5, where we're overpaying by about 30%. So, I mean, if we're talking analytics here, Brady, stay away from those overs, man. Just go with the unders, and you're getting plus money there too. So that's plus money on the under 2.5 at least. And the prop template prefers the under 2.5 a lot more than it does the fight doesn't go.
Yeah, sounds good. Man, what to see? Like the under 2.5, it looked like it opened at minus 125. Some money came in on the over. It's now plus 105. Maybe money keeps coming in the overs and we get a better price. But as of now, it's a tricky one for me. I think I'm going to pass, but I am interested in this next one, though, to see what the prop template has. We have Trayshawn Gore going against Josh Fremd, and we have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds. The over 1.5 is minus 185. The under 1.5 is plus 155. The fight goes to decision, plus 195. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 240. And I want to say, like, right off the bat, like, these lines are completely different than 5 dimes. Like, they're not even close. Bet Online is like way over pricing these, whereas on 5 dimes they have the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 175, and they have the under 2.5 at minus 130. So big differences between prices here, Weezy, on these books.
Yeah, and look at, I mean, like, this minus 240 for the fight doesn't go to decision is just, I mean, it's bonkers. That's crazy, dude. Look at the negative trifecta, negative 15%, negative 37.25%. But these two numbers down here don't mean as much because we don't have much of a sample size for these guys. 1 fight for Fremd, 2 fights for Trey, right? So only a 3-fight sample size. But when we have that small of a sample size, we can kind of lean on the career finish rates. We're seeing about 64% here, and both guys are right in that 60% range there. So that's a good thing. But yeah, we're paying 70% here, and it's harder to finish guys at the UFC level. And Fremd and Gore have mostly a regional scene experience. So this is one that fight doesn't go, at least on Bet Online, which is where we're getting the line from, is incredibly overpriced. 15% compared to the benchmark. The under 1.5 is overpriced by about 2.33%, and it's a lot more reasonable for the under 1.5. But yeah, this fight goes to decision here at plus 195. I don't hate that at all, man. Trey Gore's kind of low volume, and Fremd might grapple some here, and if he grapples some, that'll slow down this fight. We've seen both of these guys knocked out before. Fremd got knocked out by Hobo Cop on the regional scene in LFA, and we saw Trey Gore get knocked out by a friend of the MMA engine, Cody Brundage, in his last fight. So, yeah, 2 of these guys' 5 combined pro losses have been inside the distance, and 1 of their 3 UFC losses have been inside the distance. So, yeah, I like the fight goes here at a fat plus money number of plus 195. And even though these 32 and 21% numbers are taken from a very small sample size, so we can't really get too excited about them, we're still getting a 10.88% break when we compare that fight goes to the amount of fights that go at this division, which is 45%. 45% fight goes to decision rate. We're only paying 34%. So I like the fight goes here.
Yeah, I think what you might be able to do is just bet that fight goes, and then later in the week you could easily arb out. That line is going to move very. I'm surprised it hasn't moved yet because there's such a big difference there on really every other book. Bet Online's hanging that 240, but you see these other books, they have the under 2.5 at -125, -118, -130, and by the way, DraftKings has the under 2.5 at -125. I'd be curious to see what that looks like.
-125. Okay, wait a second. Okay, under 2.5 -125, overpriced by about 5.5% when we compare it to the benchmark under 2.5, which is about 50%. Overpriced by, these numbers don't mean too much because it's only a 3-fight sample size, Brady, but 22%, 16% overpriced. So not as bad as the fight doesn't go, obviously, at -240. It's much better price there if that's what you're looking for. And if you think the stylistic matchup calls for violence, that -125 is certainly a lot more bettable. And what do they have the over at?
Let me see. So they have the under at -125, and then the over is at -105.
-105. And that -105 is overpriced by 1.33% when we compare it to the benchmark. So, yeah, I'm going to be making that fight goes at +195 bet.
Yeah, I don't hate that at the number. And then, like I said, you could easily, if you want to, arb out later in the week because I'm almost certain that line's and it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all why it's like that on Bet Online.
Yeah, I agree, man. That one is way, way underpriced.
Yes.
I will go a little bit of discount shopping here after I got back from Miami on that one.
I like it. Discount shop it. All right. So WEEZY, is the next fight the Waldo fight?
It is.
Well,
yes.
All right, let's talk about it then. We got Jared Vandera going against Waldo Cortez Acosta. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 +151. The under 2.5 rounds is -181. The fight goes to decision +170. The fight doesn't go to decision is -210. I remember Waldo from the Contender Series, and I didn't bet it, but what really tempted me in the Waldo fight was the over 1.5 rounds, and then all of a sudden he goes out there and just stands and bangs with that Mozart guy or Kozert guy or Suzert. That's what his name was.
Yeah.
And then he finished him, I believe, in the first round. So that didn't hit. But this is a fight where I think it does go over 1.5. I would have liked the over 1.5 a little bit more. They don't have that line. 2.5 scares me a little bit, but we're getting +151 on it. So that kind of sticks out. I think a late finish is in play here, but I really would like to see the over what the 1.5 set at.
Yeah, me too, man. So let's take a look and see what these guys have done as professionals here, because Cortez Acosta is new to the UFC. 5 of 7 wins inside the distance, and the young man is undefeated here. So a 71% finish rate. Vandera in his professional fight, 76% finish rate, 75% finish rate in 28 combined pro fights. And it's a little bit lower than that here at the UFC level at a 71.43% rate. So Vandera has been inside the distance 71% of the time as a pro here. And that's as a UFC fighter. And that is exactly Cortez Acosta's finish rate as a pro. So we've got a pretty small sample size. So these numbers don't mean a whole lot to me. But this is overpriced by about 5% at -210 here, which is 67.74%. And this is overpriced by about 5.8% here, the under 2.5. When we go to the nonviolent side, it's not like we're getting this great break at +170 for the fight goes or +151 for the over 2.5 here. But I do know that Costa has been to decision a couple of times with the higher level fighters, and then he just kind of got a guy to engage, and it was a Contender Series fight. I got a feeling this one maybe goes over, but I don't know if they're hanging a fat enough number there for me to sweat out an over 2.5 in a heavyweight fight, dude. I got enough gray hairs, and both of these guys do hit pretty hard, especially that Cortez Acosta. The dude looks like a legit prospect.
Yeah, DraftKings has the over 1.5 at -120. What does that do? Because it took Romanov over 1.5 rounds to finish.
Yeah, man, 54%, and that's actually a trifecta bet, Brady, at -120. It adds up to about 5% of advantages, but it tells you that it's a fairly priced line at minus 120 for an over 1.5, because these things go over 1.5 almost 57% of the time, and we're paying 54.5 here.
Yeah, I mean, Spivak, it took him over 1.5. It took Romanov over 1.5. It took Sherman over 1.5 to finish this guy. I think the over 1.5 is a look that really tempts me. The only problem is I hate betting overs, and betting an over in the heavyweight fights is terrifying. But man, I was looking at the over in the Acosta fight in his last fight. I might go back to it here. I don't mind that price tag at minus 120.
Yeah, and I think prior to that Suzart fight, he had been to decision twice in a row. And if I remember, the fight before that finished with like 15 seconds left in the third round or some shit.
It was like 7 seconds.
Yeah, something like that, right? Where, I mean, like the damn thing almost went to decision, and that would have been almost 3 fights in a row on the regional scene for Waldo Cortez Acosta. And we know that Vandera is not going to shoot takedowns here. So this could be a boxing match that goes the full 3. I'd like to get plus 200. I'd like to get plus 175 for the over 2 point. You don't want to put this sweat on yourself unless you're getting that fat number. Like, hey, how about plus 190 for fight goes for Gore? That's much better, instead of 170 on a heavyweight fight. I'd rather do it on the middleweight fight.
Yeah, I feel it. I will not be touching that 2 and 2.5 scares the crap out of me. 1.5, 7.5 minutes, I could potentially do it, even though I hate over so much. But that was one that kind of caught my eye. All right, so we'll keep moving on here. We have another very interesting one. We have Dustin Jacoby going against Khalil Roundtree. Over under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 plus 130. The under 2.5 minus 160. The fight goes decision plus 155. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 190. I was watching tape on Khalil Roundtree today, and when he shows up, this guy is terrifying to watch. I was showing my wife his tape. We were watching the fights together. She was like, "What the fuck?" With Khalil, like, he is a scary man. Like the Roberson fight was scary. The Bukowskis fight was scary. When he shows up, this guy is an animal. On the flip side, when he doesn't show up, he loses to Marcin Prokhnio. This is a fight where I like violence, but minus 190, like, I could easily see Jacoby just playing it smart, sticking on the outside and picking apart this guy for 3 rounds. On the flip side, I could see killer Roundtree showing up, pissed off Roundtree, and beating the shit out of Jacoby and putting him out as well. When Roundtree shows up, and he legit shows up, this guy is terrifying. So another one where I just don't know. Minus 190 it's a steep price tag for me, Weezy.
Yeah, man. Was he the one who just dismantled Anders?
Oh, yes.
Dude, remember that? And you mentioned 2 other fights where he looked like an absolute monster. So, yeah, man, this is a fun fight, plain and simple. These violence lines are a little bit overpriced, though. We've got a decent sample size, too, Brady. So 4.41 overpriced on the fight doesn't go, 2.4% on the under 2.5. And then when we compare these guys' finish rates to the implied probability of the line, we're overpaying by about 11% on the fight doesn't go and about 7% on the under 2.5. So long story short, the prop template likes the under 2.5 a lot better than the fight doesn't go. Both of these guys have 62.5% finish rates as professionals. And at the UFC level, it's Roundtree who's finishing 8 of 12, Jacoby 4 of 10. So, yeah, and, these rates are similar in wins and losses here, So the wins, the losses, and then there's a draw in there, I think, 2 draws in there, actually. 54.55%. Yeah, it's not a great finish rate. That's not something we can really hang our hat on and go up and pay 65% for, because we've got a good sample size. And when we're looking here at the non-violent side, boy, I need bigger numbers than this, Brady, if I'm going to sweat out an over 2.5 in a fucking Khalil Roundtree fight. So stay away. The prop template is telling me to stay away from this one. And what's even better than that is it's the kind of fight I can enjoy without having money on it.
Having money on a Khalil Roundtree fight is the worst experience of my life. It's because he one time he shows up, the next time he does. It's so unpredictable.
Yeah.
He could show up and look like a bum. He could show up and look like an absolute bum, or he could show up and look like a killer. So, by the way, DraftKings has the over under set at 1.5, and that over 1.5 is minus 140.
minus 140.
See what that does.
Okay. Overpriced by about 4.74% when we compare it to the benchmark. Overpriced by about 3.79% when we compare the over 1.5 rates at the UFC level of Roundtree and Jacoby combined. And these guys are going over 1.5, almost 1% more than the division. So it's another line. It's not even as appealing as the over 2.5 in the fight goes, according to the analytics. It's not something that really jumps out. What's that under 1.5? Does DraftKings have it at?
Yeah, the under 1.5 is plus 110.
110, did you say?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, there's nothing jumping out here, except for that fight doesn't go at minus 190. Is a little bit overpriced in all three areas. Negative trifecta bets for the under 2.5, the under 1.5, and the fight doesn't go here. So tread lightly on the violent side, but it's not like the non-violent side is worth sweating that out.
I agree. I mean, Bangkok Roundtree could show up, and that was terror. I remember watching that fight with Anders, and I was on Anders. It was just a terrible. He got knocked down like 4 times. I've never seen anything like it.
That was an incredible performance, man.
Oh yeah,
It was something, dude. I think Roundtree was minus 750 in his next fight, and I think he dropped the ball.
Yeah, I remember smashing the under 1.5 in the Procneo fight, and just sitting with my mouth open, my jaw dropped. Fight Island Roundtree, and then just watching it go over. Like, are you kidding me?
Oh, that was brutal, dude. That was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I almost smashed my TV, but we have 2 fights left, I believe. We got this is a good one. Tim Means going against Max Griffin. The over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is minus 170. The under 2.5 is plus 140. The fight goes to decision, minus 150. The fight doesn't go to decision, is plus 120. And this is another tricky one for me because Max Griffin is as tough as they come. This guy's as tough as nails. And Tim Means, the guy's now 38 years old. He's been finished quite a few times. He's been hurt a lot. I could potentially see a Max Griffin inside the distance win, but plus 120, I don't know if it's enough meat on the bone for me. WEEZY, anything sticking out on this one?
Yeah, it's what sticks out is that this is a very well-priced line where you're not getting a lot of love either way here. 2 negatives and a positive here for the over 2.5 at minus 170. 2 negatives and a positive here for the fight goes. And then you see -2 and +2 and a 0.44, so everything's priced right about on. And let's look at the fighter stats for these guys. 60% almost finish rate in 74 combined pro fights. And we've got a fat sample size of UFC fights here. Griffin's fights are only finishing inside the distance 30% of the time.
Wow.
And for Means, it's 48% of the time. So Means is a little more likely to get finished in a loss, as he's been finished in 5 of 10 UFC losses. But Griffin, very durable. I believe the only guy to finish him was Colby Covington. 1 out of 7 losses inside the distance. So we got a durable guy here in Max Griffin. And we got a guy in Max Griffin who's finished 3 of 6 wins. So he's not like this vicious finisher either. So, the overs are juiced, though. Minus 150 for the fight goes, minus 170 for the over 2.5. I can't condone that because, this is a 37-year-old fighting a 38-year-old. You could see somebody getting finished here, man.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about maybe the Griffin finish only, but it looks like they have it around like minus 180. So, yeah, probably another one I'll just stay away from.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't believe that Rogerio de Lima. I almost threw my phone into the ocean in Miami because I saw that just before I left for the airport. Yeah. I was like, come on, man, that is garbage.
-4, like that's you typically don't see them that juiced. I mean, they're all over it,
man. But they were on it, we were drooling over what that was going to open on at Stat Diggers. So I guess you can't blame them for putting it there, but I still hate it.
Yeah, you cannot blame him at all. But we're about to get into this main event here. I do appreciate everybody hanging out. We got Chris in the chat. We got Mushroom. We got Papa Chalk. We got Bob. We got Victor. We got Worth It. Appreciate all you guys hanging out with us on a Monday. We got David in here as well. We got Pink in here. Appreciate all you guys. If you guys have not yet, be sure to leave a like and subscribe here to the MMA Engine. All right, we have the main event, and we have the over-under is set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 is minus 130. The under 4.5 is plus 100. The fight goes to decision minus 140 or minus 120, and the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 110. That is on Bet Online. And then we're taking a look at 5 dimes here. Looks like the fight doesn't go plus 105. The fight goes minus 140. So it's pretty similar. I'm kind of interested in, I don't know, potentially an over here, WEEZY, just because of both guys. They're so tough. Calvin Kattar's next level durable, and Arnold Allen, I don't believe he's ever been finished. Has he?
Nope, only one professional loss, and I don't even know what year that was, man. It was a long time ago.
So I'm kind of thinking like the overs here, and they're not like a crazy price, but I know you have the 5-round analytics. I'm curious to see what these ones say.
Yeah, so for featherweights, you know, we don't get a lot of finishes in featherweight fights and 3-round fights. It's one of the lowest finish rates of any men's division. It's right there with the actually with the flyweight division, about 43%. But they do finish inside the distance in a 46 fight sample size here, 26 times. So that's 56.5%, and the fights are going to decision 43.48% of the time. So right now for this one, we're doing 52% for the fight doesn't go. And yeah, that's pretty fairly priced here. And we're looking at a 54% right now for the fight goes. So yeah, the fight goes 43% of the time, and we're really overpaying for that at 52%. And we're paying about 53% because there's a nice amount of juice in this line because it's the first one to open. A lot more juice in this. This will narrow down later on in the week as the market kind of figures out where it needs to go. But, you know, I'd still like to get that closer to evens. I'd rather not pay juice. I'd rather get a 6 to an 8% edge here if I'm going to look for violence, because Calvin Kattar is incredibly durable. And as you said, Arnold Allen's never been finished either. So this is one that's not really jumping off the page for me. I don't want to pay juice for either line, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Calvin Kattar, not only has he never been finished, I don't believe he's been knocked down, has he? Which is wild.
He has been finished once in his career long time ago by submission. I don't even know what year it was, like I said, but you know, he's never been finished at the UFC level. And yeah, we can look and see here. I don't even think he has been knocked down.
He's not. He's absorbed a ton.
Yeah, because he really has. Yeah. Never knocked down, or I'm sorry, yeah, never knocked down 1,227 significant strikes at the UFC level. This man has never absorbed a knockdown. That's incredible. So, you know, and that 54% striking defense is low. That's why he's absorbing 7.15 significant strikes a minute. So, yeah, those kind of power numbers that these guys have are pretty good. You know, we could see a knockdown in this fight, but neither one of these guys has ever been knocked down at the UFC level. And that's in almost 1,500 combined significant strikes. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose if I could get a plus money number on the fight goes, that would make me feel a lot better. But still, only 46% of fights go at this. If we look here, it's 43% of featherweight 5-round fights go to decision. So, yeah, it feels like a stay away here. It just doesn't feel like these lines are priced in a way that we're getting a break on either side.
Yeah, it looks like they have the over 4.5 at minus 130. The over 3.5 is like minus 180. I don't mind those. The 2.5 is like minus 245 for that over 2.5. That's juiced. But...
Okay, so they go over 2.5 about 63% of the time. What are they charging?
Minus 245.
See, dude, yeah, that's like 70% that they're charging. So that's overpaying. What did they have for the over 3.5?
Minus 180.
Yeah, and they only go over 3.5 50% of the time. So you should be paying close to about 100 plus 100 if you want to be around the benchmark there. So you're overpaying for that benchmark as well.
Yep, another fight we're probably gonna stay away unless money comes in on these violence props. If I can get a better line on these fight goes or overs, but even then, I don't know. Both guys do hit very hard, so we'll have to see. All right, WEEZY, we did it. We went through all 10 fights. I'll kind of go through what kind of stuck out to me, and then you can kind of talk about what stuck out to you. Honestly, not a ton. I guess the one thing that really stuck out to me was the violence in the Lima fight. We talked about that under 1.5 rounds. I like that a lot. But other than that, nothing I'm really running to the window for. So
Gore friend fight goes to decision at plus 195. If we want to be pricks, we could parlay those two and get like 10-1 and make it the fattest probability parlay ever and just say, hey, we're relying on the analytics. These fat plus money numbers are way underpriced. Let's take advantage of it. Let's buy yachts. And then let's go into next week with a fat roll to make even some more money. That's what I'm saying, dude. And I'm going to bet both of those individually. If I can get the under 1.5 at plus 200 or better in that Lima Arlovski fight, that just says, all right, we think that Lima is going to be the one that controls the pace of this fight. If we're wrong, we can risk less to win 1 unit. We only have to risk a half unit to win 1. Rather than if we're going on the under 2.5 or the fight doesn't go, then we're paying juice. Then we have to bet way more to win that 1 unit. So definitely like that at plus 200 or better. And Gore friend, if we can get it on Bet Online at plus 195 for the fight goes, that's way underpriced. That's a fat plus money number. Let's parlay those two and see if we can make a fat stack. What would that come out to?
It doesn't show up because we don't have the 5 dimes on best, but it's probably around like plus 800, plus 900.
Yeah, dude. Let me just get a plus 215 number here. I'll do the parlay calculator here.
Oh, good idea.
So bam, and then we'll go for the Arlovski fight. It is here, and of course they don't have it. Damn it! I just have to find a plus number. We'll just say plus 200 here, and then a plus 190. We'll just say that the plus 200 twice.
What is it, right? It's plus 195, and then
yeah,
and then what's the over 1.5 on?
Well, it's going to come out to about plus 800. Because like if we were to parlay 2 plus 200s, it would come out to plus 800. So that's a fat one.
15. Let me see here. Yeah, plus 829.
Not bad. Plus 829. Let's do that one. Let's have some fun this week because there's not a lot of juice numbers that I think are worth paying for this week. So why even parlay them? We don't parlay things that aren't plus EV to begin with.
I feel it. Yeah, let's get a home run this week, right? I like both of those. All right, Weezy, we did it. Thank you all for hanging out, guys. Leave a like, subscribe. Uncle Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah, man. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy, tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Central Time for Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. We're going to break down all 11 of these fights. I think they're trying to find Christian Rodriguez a fight here. I don't know if they're going to be successful, but that would be cool. But if not, we'll break down all 10 of these fights from a stats and tape study perspective. I'll give you all my track bets that I have so far for the week, and we'll finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. And on Wednesday, you can find me on the Pub Sports Radio channel with Brady, Monk, and Gordo doing the DFS show. You can also find me there on for every Sunday for Stat Diggers. Let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for this one, you guys. I'm looking forward to UFC Vegas 63.
Let's do it. Should be a fun card, and then next week we have another good card, and then we have, I believe, UFC 281 after that. So some good cards coming up, good fights. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. You guys can check me out on my channel, DFS by the number. Should get my prediction video out maybe tomorrow. If not, then Wednesday. But I'm hoping I can get everything done by tonight. So that's about it, guys. Best of luck, UFC Vegas 63, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.